Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the newest episode of the Theater Enthusiast podcast. I'm so delighted to welcome our next guest, currently in Moulin Rouge, one of the remaining original cast members, one of five in the ensemble, understudies Christian and the Duke. Other
Mm.
credits include Kinky Boots, It Shoulda Been You, bunch of regional credits, also Diner, which we'll totally get into. I have it starred in my notes. I'm so curious about it. Please welcome
Yeah,
Finley. Woo! You could be your own hype person too. Woo, woo.
I love that. Let's plot it.
Yeah,
Round
circle
of applause.
applaud. Yeah. I used to have an
Hmm.
applause app, but it stopped working over Zoom. So I was
It's
like,
fine.
I'm just gonna awkwardly applaud into this microphone.
We'll treat it like holiday audiences, very quiet and respectful.
Yeah.
Quiet and
You know, it's
respectful.
so funny. I was telling my friends yesterday, I'm like, you know how you can spot an out of towner? And I say this because you mentioned holiday audience, which is mostly out of towners. So you can always
Hmm.
spot an out of towner in Central Park because they're so into the squirrels in the park. Because I was
Really?
walking through, yeah, I was walking through Central Park yesterday to go to the Met. And I've always noticed that like foreigners or like non-New Yorkers are always like trying to get close to the squirrels to like take a photo or to like feed them or to like interact with them. And then I was telling
Sure.
my friends that last night. They're like, I love squirrels. I'm like, you're not like a real New Yorker if you interact with squirrels.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway,
I
how
mean, I
was
would not get too
holiday?
close to any sort of rodent in our city, but sure, if you want to get close to
Yeah.
the squirrels, go for
Yeah.
it.
Well, I don't know. Pigeons, I feel like over the last couple of years are trying to take over because they don't like some of them will just
They
like
have,
not get out of your way.
yeah, they have no natural predators. Really, they don't. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you at least have a cat and you put your cat out, but so many pigeons
Yeah,
everywhere.
there's a lot. There's white ones now, which I saw a couple of years ago. I'm like, that's new. Yeah. Well, anyway, enough about squirrels and pigeons. Welcome to
Sure.
the podcast. So I always start with, where are you from?
I grew up in Bozeman, Montana,
Hmm.
so a long ways from here.
Yes.
Um, it's a it's a town that became very popular in the last couple of years, especially for the pandemic, like as like one of those places that was idyllic and everybody moved to from the cities and whatnot. But it's a college town, it's a ski town. It's John Mayer lives close.
Oh,
Everybody is,
I,
yeah,
let's move there. I love John Mayer. Let's go.
right, exactly. I know. So it's like it was a great place to grow up. I loved it there.
Yeah.
I got to spend the pandemic there, so it was fun to kind of go back and,
Yeah.
just kind of reconnect with my Montana roots. It was good.
Were you one of the actors who just packed up and moved back home with the family during the pandemic?
Yes.
Yeah.
We survived 3 months, right? Because everything, I mean, it's a very vivid memory when everything shut down in March and it was so bad, right? I mean, it was so bad here for months. And I feel like we were all kind of in this waiting game, like, is it going to pass or the theater's going to reopen? We were all just kind of like hanging out and waiting. And then we just realized at some point we're like, this is only getting worse. There's no
Yeah.
way anything is going to open again. And
Yeah.
so we were like kind of month to month on our apartment. I live out in Montclair, New Jersey, and we were like, let's just
Hmm.
go. And so we gave up our apartment. We packed stuff into storage here, and then we just kind of like we loaded a U-Haul in our car and drove, 2,500 miles to Montana, and then spent a year and a half there before everything kind of reopened and Broadway came back. We were there the whole time. My kids got to go to school out there, where it's out here it was all remote learning. So there was stuff that they got to do that they wouldn't have gotten to do if we stayed here. Like Montana was like, there's a pandemic going on, really?
Yeah.
Like it was weird. It was such a weird world to go into, but we were
Yeah.
lucky. It was fun. It was nice to go back.
What did you do during the creative? You hear me? I'm brain farting so much. I apologize. During the pandemic to stay creative, were you? I mean, I mentioned, and if people who listen to the podcast and I talk about this all the time, but like I did virtual play readings with a bunch of different actors. Did you take part
Hmm.
in anything virtually? Did you just like write or anything? What did you do?
Um, so it's kind of a two-parter. I think I indulged in my hobbies really
Mhm.
hard when I was in Montana because I could go. I mean, kind of aside from like the art part of it, like I just did stuff that I never got to do out here, right? With when you're on a show schedule or you're doing everything that New York entails. So when I was back home, I was skiing, I was biking, I was hiking, we were going fishing, we were like whatever.
Yeah.
Kind of like just indulged in all the old hobbies that I used to have. And then for me, I did something similar to this. I started with a company called Zog Culture, who does like events for corporations and for like businesses. I Zoom program for them where they would bring on their company, and I would basically give them a pick of the list. So I'm like, we'll do a show based on a popular Broadway show that you all love. So I was like, you can choose Hamilton, you can choose Wicked, you can choose. I gave them a list. And let's say they chose Hamilton, like we want to learn about Hamilton. So they would come on. I would have like my friend Tamar Green, who is George Washington in Hamilton, the current company. I'd have him come on and I would interview him, kind of like you're doing me. We'd have like it was definitely it felt like a podcast, like a live
Yeah.
podcast. They would learn a little bit about his life, what was like auditioning for Hamilton, what it's like doing the show, and then he would sing a song or two, which was really fun. And he like plays piano. He's like stupid talented, so he plays accompanied himself and would like play something, and then I would sing a song kind of at the end, and it would just be kind of this back and forth, and that was like really fun for me because I set up those probably um one or two every couple of weeks, and I would do different ones, and I have like friends from Wicked, friends from and so in Moulin Rouge I had some friends come on, so like that was like my like outlet at least to like see my friends, like
Mhm.
make a little bit of money, do these little podcast Zoom shows.
Yeah.
I actually am kind of sad they went away because it was fun to kind of connect with my friends and
Yeah.
do that in that sort of way. And but yeah, that was kind of like my one and only creative outlet. I didn't do a lot of other stuff over the pandemic in regards to that. It was just kind of like my own little theater
Yeah.
podcast sort of
Well, I
thing.
mean,
Yeah.
no offense, and you can still do that. Like you could do a
Yeah.
podcast and film it and throw it up on YouTube. I mean, a lot of people, they
Do you think
record.
people would be into it? Yeah, they probably would be. I know.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I always
Listen,
am
if you,
like, there's so many people in this space. What do I have to offer? Yeah, but you're right. You're right.
I'm doing it. I always joke that nobody listens to my podcast. I have no idea who listens. And it's always exciting when someone's
Yeah,
like, oh, I've
totally.
heard of your podcast. I'm like, "Oh, you have? Oh my God, that's
You're like,
great."
wow.
It's like people like me. Who knew? Yeah,
No,
but
no, that's amazing. You're absolutely right.
yeah.
I definitely miss it, and I think it would be kind of fun to
Yeah.
relaunch it in like a new way. Like you don't have to have like a just upload on YouTube, right? YouTube's a thing.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
have a channel that has nothing on it, so
yeah, I will admit, like, I don't, people have asked me, like before coming on, like, oh, are you recording? And I said, yeah, I video record, but I don't release the video. And they're like, okay, great. I won't put on makeup. I'm like, I'm going to, so I don't look like a gremlin when I meet you for the first time. But yeah, no, I don't release video, but I've been told by people I should, and I know of other people who have podcasts who release videos or like photos that they take with the
mhm.
person and like during the interview before or after. I mean, it's really up to the
Yeah.
person. But yeah, there's definitely a market for it. And I think also because Moulin Rouge has such a big fan base, they
Hmm.
have a dedicated Moulin Rouge fans Instagram.
Yeah,
Um,
they're great. I mean, that
yeah,
they run their thing. Like
yeah.
it's quite the
Yeah.
operation. Yeah.
I will say, like, I saw Moulin Rouge like January before the pandemic. I used to work in hospitality as a concierge, and it was a concierge night. And I was talking to like one of the people who worked at the theater. And I was like, oh, I've seen Moulin Rouge. It's great before, like, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, do you run the Moulin Rouge fans account? I was like, no, I don't. And I was like, is this person a mystery? Like, nobody knows who runs it. But that was also however many years ago. So, yeah, but I definitely,
We all know who runs it. Yeah,
okay,
yeah, we all
great.
know who runs it, and they're great.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
very
there's
on
I
it.
mean,
Like,
three. It started as three of them, and I don't
mhm,
know if the third one does much, but I know two of them are definitely very involved, and like they know who's like in and out before
yeah.
I do every
Mhm.
day. I don't even know who their sources are. It's very impressive.
Well, I know that David Harris is out, so I'm like, oh, is Aaron going on as the Duke at all? Just so like I knew when I was interviewing you, but I know it's Dylan. And weirdly, speaking of him, I think I was there his actual like first night going on as the Duke. Like he made his principal debut
Dylan?
like the night I was there. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
Yeah. And I even like slid into
yeah.
his DMs. I'm like, you were great. So that was years
Why
ago.
not?
Yeah, why not? Slide into people's DMs. Half the time nobody reads them. Anyway, yeah, but like I was saying, there is a big fan base because you're in Moulin Rouge. And I mean, at least for me, if I see a show and there's somebody in the show that I'm a fan of, I'll follow their career. And I'm sure there's many
Hmm.
Moulin Rouge people who will do the same if and when you move on to something else. Like you will have that fan base of people. And also if you bring on somebody who other people are fans of, 100% they'll watch or listen.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, did you see what Ricky has done, right? Like what Ricky has done with his Moulin Rouge fan base is like
Yeah.
it's amazing. You know, it's like
Yeah.
he did his Ricky lives, right? And he would which was started out as his warm up before the
Uh-huh.
show, and he'd get on his guitar and do his thing, and he had thousands of people watching his
Yeah.
warm ups, and like then he would just put on a concert with everybody and and they would sell out like really fast, and it's
Yeah.
just cool to see like that. Oh yeah, people are interested in like more than just your Instagram photo or whatever. It's cool.
Yeah. And that's also kind of what's, I mean, not to like toot my podcast, but like I think people also like hearing behind the scenes stuff and hearing people's whatever.
Hmm.
So,
They do. Yeah.
yeah. So sorry,
Yeah.
my
Like I would always ask, no, I would always ask my guests on my
Mhm,
podcast, like, it's like, because apart from like what's it like doing Hamilton every night, like
mhm,
it's always fun to tell, like I would always have like, hey, tell me a white room story, right? And then we'd explain to the people that are not in theater, like, what's a white room story, what's that mean, and if you've seen Only Murders in the Building, there's a white room episode that I laughed so hard because it's like just the personification of, it's amazing, of a white room experience that Steve Martin's character goes through. But it's just like those sorts of stories are so fun for people because they get to hear like, oh, like this is like one of those moments in my life where I was so embarrassed because this happened on stage. And, and
mhm.
a lot of times people don't even know, like they don't even realize that something like that, even if they're in the audience that night, so
Yeah.
it's fun to give them the inside scoop.
Yeah. I mean, I always say like if, performs like, oh my God, that happened. I'm like, yeah, but the audience doesn't know that something happened. It
Yeah.
just, yeah.
Rarely. Yeah.
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 So now we're back in Montclair, New Jersey.
Hmm.
Or we should say we're back in Montana in your youth, going back to you
Yes,
growing
in my
up.
youth. Hmm.
That's your youth,
Yep.
as the Italians in movies call it. Hold on a second.
Hmm.
I had a cough. What got you into performing? What got you interested in that?
um so as a kid, my mom sang. She was a singer. She sang at church a lot when I was growing up. And she was always encouraging me to sing and just do different things. And I would do like Christmas plays as a kid.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was like your one chance to shine per year, right? Was in the
Yeah.
Christmas play. And then I did, as I was getting older, um, I kind of got into choir a little bit in junior high because like
Mhm.
you would do band and you would do choir in my junior
Yeah.
highs. And so I did both of those. And then once I got into high school, I wanted to sing. But our band was going to the Rose Bowl to play the Rose Bowl parade.
Yeah.
And that was like a big deal. So I was like, well,
Yeah.
I hate the trumpet so much, but I really want to go to Pasadena,
Yeah.
for
It's kind of
the
like
Rose Bowl
a
parade. So
once in
I
a
did,
lifetime thing. Yeah.
it was like a once in a lifetime thing. So I was like, I stayed in the band. So as a freshman, I was in the band, but then I was also in what I think was like one of the most important things in my development was I was in a tenor based choir. So our school had a massive choir program, and the school I went to, like in Montana, is big. I mean, like over 2,000 students. So it's a
Oh,
big,
wow.
big school, really big arts programs. So I'm so grateful for those. But I had, as a young man, as a freshman, um, almost everybody is funneled through the tenor-based choir. So the guys have their own choir, the girls have their own choir as freshmen. And the reason for that, I think, is brilliant, is that you're learning your voice, right? Your voices are changing for men. Lots of things are happening, and you're also learning how to harmonize with other people, right? And so the tenor bass choir is like you're just singing arrangements for men, but you're learning a tenor part, a baritone part, like tenor one, tenor two, whatever, like
Yeah.
as the breakdown was for basses as well. And so I think that kind of foundation was like really what got me into really enjoying to sing more than playing band or doing any of that stuff. Because I had this amazing choir director who like focused on us hard when we were younger, and then you kind of built us up. So by the time you were a freshman through junior senior year, you're moving into more advanced choirs. We had like a concert choir, but then like the elite was a jazz choir. We didn't do like like Glee sort of stuff. Like I don't remember any theater stuff in high school. I never did
Yeah.
anything theater related at all. Um, but we had a jazz choir and we'd sing like super complicated jazz arrangements of, Manhattan Transfer stuff. And so I sang a lot and learned how to read music, how to stay on your part, and do all those things. And so for me, early on, it was basically just focused on like vocal performance, and that was like all I did. Um, and I quit band after the Rose Bowl, so I was done by sophomore year.
Yeah.
Totes done. It was
Probably like
great.
you and half
And
the band did. They're like, oh,
yeah, and
Rose
have
Bowl.
no, I think there was a mass exodus after the Rose Bowl. Yeah, I think there
Yeah.
was. And so I just did choir. That was like my main art that I did throughout
Mhm.
high school. But I was a terrible student, like really bad. Like I thought school was just to hang out and see your friends. And so my study habits weren't great. I was one of those students where, like, because it drove my mom crazy and like friends, like I would get like A's on tests and I'd get F's on homework, and my grade would be like a D or a C. Like I would just pass the class,
Yeah.
because I learned it. I just didn't do anything. I hate,
Yeah.
I was terrible with homework and projects and whatever. So I graduated high school with a 2.7 GPA, something to be really proud of, and didn't want to go to college. I had no interest in school, hated school. And so I worked as a professional painter for 3 years. I painted houses like Bill Gates's house in the Yellowstone Club in Montana, like these fancy homes. And I learned a skill because my dad's like, well, you got to have a job. So I went to school. So before I decided that was not really what I wanted to be in my life, was a painter after 3 years and seeing everybody I was surrounded by every day. I was like, man, like I love to sing still. Maybe I should go to college. And so since I had never taken an SAT or an ACT, after
Mhm.
3 years, colleges don't require that. So I applied for school in Seattle and I was like, I'll just go. And the only thing I know how to do is sing. So I'll just go for vocal performance. So I got into the school on academic probation, and and then ended up kind of getting reinvigorated with the vocal stuff, which I loved. So I got to do a lot of singing, lots of music theory, took a lot of core classes. And it wasn't until I was like a junior in college that I found theater. So it
Yeah.
took, like, for me to get to theater, like it wasn't something I started. I was like a little kid, unless you can, like a Christmas pageant, a theater.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually find it until I was like 23, maybe 22. Yeah.
So you went to Pacific Lutheran University in Seattle. So
Mhm.
why go there as opposed to other universities? Or was it really the only place you looked at?
No, so I went to, so I had a connection that my girlfriend at the time, who
Mhm.
she was at Montana State University in my hometown. She's actually my wife, so I've known her since I was 19.
Yeah.
So she, and through her family and others, they recommended this small private school out in Seattle. And they're like, you can get in. It's a really good program. I mean, it wasn't PLU. So PLU came later. It was a school called
Okay.
Trinity Lutheran College. So it was another kind of small private school. And I went there initially, and then I did a production of Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat my junior year, and I was like, "This is super fun. I love theater." And
Yeah.
my professors at the school were like, "You need to pursue this somehow. We can't do this for you here. Look around." And so at the time, I was performing. Um, I was kind of getting into like looking at the Seattle theater scene,
Hmm.
and I asked one of the artistic directors at the Village Theater in Seattle, which is one of the largest regional theaters on the West Coast.
Hmm.
Huge, like Village Theater, Fifth Avenue Theater, just massive theaters out there.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I can go, I have a 4.0 GPA. I can go anywhere I want to transfer.
Hmm.
Um, where should I go? And I was like, University of Washington, Seattle Pacific. I was just like schools in the area because I didn't really want to move away from
Yeah.
Seattle. I was kind of like, I liked my groove there, and they all recommended PLU. At the time, right before me, like Lewis Hobson, who was in the original Broadway company of Next to Normal,
Oh
he
yeah.
had graduated from PLU, some
Hmm.
others. And so I looked at their theater program. I was like, okay, let's give it a try. So I applied there, got like a sweet scholarship because I was actually a good student now.
Yeah.
and
So
and
it
so I
happens
was
with
actually, so
age.
PLU actually,
Yeah.
yeah, so I transferred there. Exactly. I
Mhm.
needed those 3 years after high school. Like
Yeah.
the best thing I ever could have done, like, because it refocused me. And so I went to PLU, and and they didn't actually have like a musical theater program. For them, it was theater, and then they were for a long time called the Juilliard of the West. It's a big music school, like really, really good music school. So I was doing choir and I was doing the theater department, and they don't play well together. So like I had no time to do both, and so I ended up quitting the music program and just going straight into theater. So most of my theater learnings was like actually learning how what the theater is, and like the classics, the theater lit, the Greeks, Shakespeare's, all those things. That's like what I studied in college because I didn't need the vocal like
Yeah.
music side. I already
Mhm.
knew how to do that. I needed to
Yeah.
learn how to do theater. And so I think that was like the best thing for me too. It's like I just didn't jump into a musical theater program. For me, I just did theater, like straight theater, like learn how to direct, act, all the things, and then I could layer on my musical stuff later. So
Yeah.
it was great for me. It was a good program.
Did you do any like classical plays, like perform any classical works in college?
Yeah, we did. I think there was like 3 or 4 student productions every year.
Mhm.
Um, some of the ones like we did like a dream play, like it was Strindberg. We did like a Doll's House. We did. Um, I don't think I did a Shakespeare in college, unfortunately. Read a lot of Shakespeare,
Mhm.
um, but they were pretty much all plays
Yeah.
that we worked on. Like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. Like Tom Stoppard stuff we did. So it was like
That's
a
like
lot of those
Shakespeare
sorts of shows,
adjacent.
and it's like yeah, totally Shakespeare Jason, and
Shakespeare
and
adjacent.
fun because those are like the kind of the cool hip shows you do in college. Those are
Yeah.
like the fun ones.
Trying to
And
remember
then
like
and
what
then
cool
for
fun
my
shows we did. I can't. I know
yeah,
they did like I was in Stop Kiss, which like
yep,
nobody's heard of, but
yeah, we did like scene studies for like True West, right?
oh,
Do you know that
cool.
play?
Yeah.
Yeah, True West. So, like we like stuff like that was like what we like worked on. And then my senior year, you have to have like a senior thesis project, and they ended up just doing a co-production with the music department of Company. And so I got cast in the lead as Bobby, and so my senior thesis was playing Bobby in Company, and so that was like my final like hurrah, and it was an actual musical, and I got to like kind of put it all together. It was right around like just after the time when that Raul Esparza, John Doyle directed Company
Mhm.
came out, so like it was very heavily based on that, like because the music department was involved, everybody was playing instruments and doing all these, everybody but Bobby, and I played piano, kind of like Raul Esparza does at the end.
Yeah.
So it was like a fun sort of like co-production of the two, and so that was like my literally the only musical I did in college was Company, the only one I did.
I was going to ask if you brought out your trumpet skills, but you said only piano.
Yes,
So,
I did. No, I well not for that show, but in a dream play, the Strindberg play, I played this creepy. I don't even remember the name of the character, and at one point I have to like play some things on a trumpet, and I did.
oh.
I just play like that. So that was the only time I've dusted off the trumpet
You were
and
like,
done something with
guys, I went to the Rose Bowl playing the trumpet. I know what I'm
it.
doing.
Exactly right. I don't know if you know this, but yeah, I marched in front of some floats in 2000
Yeah.
or
I
99 or
mean, I
whatever it was.
can march and play the trumpet at the same time. It's a special
That's
skill.
right.
You should add that to your resume.
It
Special
was.
skills, walking while playing the trumpet.
I yeah, you don't want to do that because someone eventually is going to be like, "Hey, do
Yeah.
you mind bringing in a trumpet for this audition?" And you're like, "No, I don't want to bring in a trumpet for this audition." Not smart. Don't put those things you don't want to do in your special skills.
Yeah. I'm just like thinking back to like what I had on my acting resume. I had like burp on cue on there.
Sure,
Yeah, I can still do it.
that's a
I'm
good
not
one.
going
Yeah.
to, but I can do it, which is very unladylike, but it happens. Anyway, so once college is over, what was
Mhm.
was there a wanting to move to New York? Did you just want to stay in Seattle to do theater? Because Seattle has a very big theater scene. And, very
It does.
famously, a lot of
Yeah.
shows do a lot of I know like Legally Blonde did an out of town try it at like Fifth Avenue, Seattle. Like a lot of shows
Mhm.
are performed there with like the
Yeah.
hopes of coming to New York, what have you. So,
Yep.
what was
I
your
mean,
dream?
Here Lies Love.
Oh,
Here
yeah.
Lies Love did the rep. They did a
Mhm.
production at the Seattle Rep. Yeah,
Yeah.
back in the day. Um, so I kind of in conjunction with school around that time was also doing shows in
Mhm.
Seattle. So um so I kind of start like Village Theater was kind of like where I came up, and like I started I was like I my first role I ever had I was for me, I was just I was a off stage cover in case they needed someone, and I never went on. But I like went to the show every night and like just followed everybody around because I knew nothing, and it was so much fun to like learn while watching a professional show happen. So that
Can
was
I
super
ask what
fun.
show that was?
Um, yeah, it was called Once Upon a Time in New Jersey. It was a new show that they were kind of producing because Village Theater has a pretty good like new works program. So it was
Mhm.
like one of those. So that was the first like show that I was involved in, but I was just like off stage. I never got to do it. And then the first like show I was ever in was a production of Aida,
Mhm.
which I don't know if I would get to do that ever again because of problematic issues around that show.
Well, I
Um,
think, well,
but I was one
they
of
are
the
doing
ensemble.
a tour of it, of Aida.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they're doing a tour.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do they?
you
Is it?
can.
Are this everybody like? Is everybody like Egyptian, like of color, or you see what I mean? Like
I think
because now, because like before they would do like white people as like the Egyptian, like, and
you
then they would do
know,
the Nubians, and
I
that's
just
how they would
know
cast it.
of it, and I know that there are particular people working on it. I don't know more
Hmm.
details about it. I'm just like, oh,
Yeah, yeah,
Cynthia Erivo should play Aida in a movie, and now she's playing Alphabet. But like that's where
sure,
my mind went.
yeah,
But yeah, no,
totally, yeah,
I think there's hopes of it coming back somewhere. But I know that I mean, I think it's still in the works of a tour that they're doing of it. And I think they're changing some things around with it, making it more of like a certain place that Aida is from or
yeah,
what
yeah.
have you.
That makes sense.
But I definitely
Yeah,
think, I don't want to age any one of us, even though I already aged myself to you before we started recording. Aida was over 20 years ago, and I think in the climate that we're in now, I think that people are definitely more, I want to say like woke, but I think they're more aware of like what would need to change and what would need to happen if they
yeah.
were
I think
to
that's true. I think it is
bring
true. Yeah,
something back.
like yeah, I know that like I will I will say goodbye to roles like Che, things I've actually played before that I
Yeah.
will never play again. And that's fine. You know what I mean? Because like really, those stories should be told, you
Yeah.
know, I feel like by people who that make sense in their own lives and in their own story, that can identify more with those characters, whether it's through their, how they were brought up or like what their ethnicity is or whatever. I think it's important. And it's like I'm not going to play those roles anymore, which is fine.
Yeah, it's so
I'm totally
curious
okay with
because
that.
I have thought about this sometimes. Like when I was in high school, I think I feel like junior year, they did a production of The Wiz. And I went to a very white high school. So
Yeah.
everybody in the cast was not a person of color. And they did a production of The Wiz.
Right.
So,
Right.
and
And you're like,
then,
why did we
or
choose the
maybe
Wiz? Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't remember what year it was, but then there was another year because the theater teacher did some like theater program in Japan. Like she
Hmm.
decided to do a production of The Mikado. So it's like all of these white kids playing Japanese characters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, hold on.
Things we can do without, which is fine. I'm fine
Yeah,
with.
no, I'm just trying to remember. I mean, I always mention on the podcast when my high school drama teacher doesn't teach theater anymore, and it's honestly like the best thing I've ever heard in my life because I call her Spawn of Satan. And there we are. Another little fun fact. But yeah, I definitely
Fun
think
fact.
fun facts. I definitely think like in the environment we are now, they're not going to do a well-known show without doing it the correct way and casting the correct type of
Right.
people.
Agreed.
And like even when they
Yeah, for
did,
sure.
West Side Story, Spielberg did it. They even went down, I think him and why can't I think of his name right now? The playwright. He wrote Angels in America, and now I'm totally brain farting on his name.
Kushner.
Thank you. I
Kushner.
think they even went
Yeah.
down to like Puerto Rico and they like spoke to people about like how
Mhm.
they can make things better and they purposely cast, the correct type of
Yeah.
people for
Yeah.
the Sharks and the Jets and all that stuff. So, I mean, you can play Radames
Yeah.
or, in like
Sure.
one of his soldier people.
maybe. I mean, that's what I was in the original, and the one I did. Yeah, I was a
Yeah.
soldier person. I was a
Yeah.
soldier person, and um, that was the beginning and almost the end of my theater career because the final night of that show, a set piece was tracking off stage, and it hit one of our legs, and the legs was these really super tall, like 30-foot tall palm trees that were made out of myelin or whatever and like steel. And it knocked it loose and it fell across the stage as I was coming on stage. And someone yelled my name and I just looked up and moved and it hit me in the leg. But we were wearing these like hockey pads. It was a very
Mhm.
interesting production and went through those and then stuck into the floor and it would have killed me like instantly if it would have hit me in the top of the head and so that's like a memory that sticks with the Village Theater people because the night that they almost killed me because it was
Yeah.
super scary. We had to hold
Yeah.
the show and I was in shock and yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. Maybe Aida is cursed because I'm sure you heard of what happened in the like out of town tryout of Aida where Anna Pascal and Heather Headley like fell from the tomb that they were in at the end of the show,
Oh
like
really?
dropped.
Uh-uh. No,
Yeah, like it dropped with them in it and they like both had to go to the hospital. Yeah. It's a like very
yeah,
famous Aida
so maybe it
story.
is, maybe it's a show that just doesn't need to be. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I that but it, our for me, like I worked kind of like I was like learning and I was doing professionally all at like the same time. And Seattle kind of allows you to do that, like which I think is like, I mean, whenever I meet like young kids
Mhm.
who love theater and
Yeah.
are like, I'm gonna go to University of Michigan, I'm like, awesome, good luck, you know.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want them, especially because there's just so many little talented people out there. I'm like, before you make the jump to New York, think hard about going to a theater town like Seattle, like Chicago, like whatever, and um, because you can really cut your teeth and learn a ton about being a professional actor. And yeah, you're not going to be making as much. You're probably working a couple jobs. I had to do that, but like you understand what it takes, and you're getting very real professional work that's going to make you better at what you do without, I mean, there is competition, but nothing like you would have in New York and starting kind of from square one. You know, it's like by the time I decided to make the jump to New York, you know, I had already played several leads at all the top theaters in Seattle. I was already a member of the Actors Equity Union, right? Things that like do help you so much get a foot in the door when you show up to New York instead of just being involved in a random cattle call with all these people at an EPA or even at a non-equity call. You know, you're just kind of spinning your wheels. So for me, Seattle, when I just think of that part of my journey, it really was like the best possible place for me to kind of come up because I never would have thought I would be doing theater for a living ever. Like it just was
Yeah.
never on my radar until way later when I was in college. And all those things that happened in Seattle completely prepared me for my jump to New York. And so, as crazy as it is like that I landed in New York on February in 2013, and I was and I was the lead in Rock of Ages on Broadway in July of that very year. Like that doesn't happen, but it can happen if you show up and you're ready to do the job.
Yeah. I think that's important for people to also understand that that is not normal that that happens. Like you move to New York and
Yeah.
then like all of a sudden you're a lead in a Broadway show. But let's like backtrack it a smidge. So what made you decide to take the jump from Seattle to New York?
Um. So in Seattle, you audition usually in the fall for most
Mhm.
of the shows that are coming in their season. And you know pretty early on in the year what shows you're going to be doing throughout the course of the year.
Mhm.
And I know that like it just can be a little bit exhausting, right? Like you have a couple shows lined up, you're doing this and this and that. And that's like if you're successful, like if you're getting cast, right?
Yeah.
Um and but you're not necessarily making like a living wage. You
Mhm.
know, like you're doing okay.
Yeah.
But like I was also working at a wine bar. I was also doing these different things to kind of keep, you know,
Yeah.
um, keep food on the table sort of thing and paying my rent and all those things. And I just realized that like that there is a glass ceiling in Seattle. Like you can get to this place where it's like if I wanted to just that be my quality of life and and I loved Seattle. And if there's other interests that I'd have, like Seattle would be the perfect place to stay and still do theater and still like get that fill, that
Yeah.
artistic fill. But for me, I was like, if I'm going to do theater, I want to do it for a living. And if it's not
Mhm.
making me a living, I'm not going to do theater. Like that's literally the choice that I had in front of myself. And I realized that the only place I can do theater for a living is in New York. You can't do it anywhere else. You have to go to New York. You have to either be on a tour, you have to be on Broadway, whatever. That's how you make a living doing theater. And that's like the unfortunate fact. Like if you're off Broadway, you're probably not making enough, almost enough to pay your rent. Like there really is just not a lot of options. So I was like, if I still want to give this a go, I was like, it came to a realization for me that like I needed to change my address. I needed to think about moving out of Seattle and trying New York. Unfortunately, at the time, it made things a little bit complicated because I was married. I have two little kids and no job, right? Like if I moved to
Yeah.
New York, I have nothing. I don't even have a waiting gig. So we kind of asked all of our friends and talked to a bunch of people when we were thinking about it. And I was really hoping someone would be like, "You are crazy. Don't do this move. Like, if you
Yeah.
do this move, like with your family of four, like it's going to be really hard." I'm. Nobody told us that. Everybody was like, "You need to do this. Like, you
Yeah.
absolutely should do it. Your kids are young. They'll be fine. This is good. Now's the perfect time to do it." And I sent one of my mentors, his name is Brian Yorkie. And so Brian Yorkie wrote Next to Normal. He got a
Yep.
Pulitzer Prize for that.
Yeah.
He wrote If Then. And Brian is a Seattle guy. And Brian was one of my guys that kind of brought me up in Seattle. And I didn't realize at the time how lucky I was that like he
Yeah.
was, looking out for me. And I sent him an email and he literally was like, "You absolutely need to be in New York." And I was like, okay, all right, well, I guess
Yeah.
he has spoken. Let's
Yeah.
go. So we ended up doing the move, and it was definitely after a lot of like deliberation and trying to figure out what we needed to do. But we ended up making that move, and we kind of did it in parts. I moved out there first. I kind of hit
Mhm.
the ground running, was auditioning, got a job right away at the Waverly Inn in the West Village. I was a waiter there, so I could make ends meet. But it was like, let's just go, let's just do it, let's just
And
commit,
what, by the
and
way, what a
that's
restaurant to get a job at, by the way. Like,
yeah, right.
oh yeah, I'm waitering at the Waverly Inn. No big deal.
I didn't realize it was a big deal. Like to be
Yeah.
honest, like people were like so I was like, I came from a really awesome background in Seattle at this wine bar called Purple Cafe, and so I had a lot of training and like
Mhm.
high end food service and
Yeah.
and wine pairings and food and all that stuff. So I had that kind of skill set, and so I was asking around for something similar, and I think someone mentioned the Waverly, and I was like, oh, I'll put an application there, and then I ended up getting hired. So it was like a nice gig to get right off the
Yeah.
bat.
You Waverly Inn and then months later, Rock of Ages.
Yeah.
Live your life. It's like, oh,
Right.
so are you you're waitering or waiting as you call it and auditioning at the same time. Did you have an agent and or manager that like send you on these auditions or how did you go on these things?
No, so when I came to New York, and hopefully this is helpful for people who are
Hmm.
listening who are interested in like pursuing it. The problem with New York is that if you're non-union, it's very, very difficult, right? Because you're just trying to get into EPAs. I was union, so I could get into EPAs. I could go to the different calls. Um, and I was just doing that to get as much practice as I could, right? Because like you have to audition a bunch to get good at it. And you don't do a lot of auditioning in Seattle. So I didn't really have a great skill set at that. I just had to like do it. So I was just going to a bunch of EPAs. But then my friend, Lewis Hobson, who I mentioned earlier, was
Hmm.
like, I was on the phone with him one day and he's like, how's it going? And I'm like, oh, it's going. I'm doing this. I'm working at the Waverly. I'm like doing auditions. And he's like, who's representing you? Like, who's your agent? And I'm like, oh, I don't have one. And he's like, dude, stop doing everything you're doing. The only thing you need to focus on is getting an agent. You have to have one. It puts you in a completely different set of doors. Like it's just not the same thing. And I was like, oh, he's like, you're spinning your wheels, dude. Even as an equity member, you're spinning your wheels. Like you're going to get to know casting directors, which is good, but your agents are going to put you in different rooms. And so what was interesting was one of the casting directors, Craig Burns at Telsey, one day was like, "You need to get an agent." And I was like, "Great, how?" you know. And
Yeah.
he put me in touch with DGRW at the time, and I went to them and I interviewed with them, and they liked me. But I also had a friend who put me in touch with my agency, CGF, Carlton Gardner Freer Talent, who's been awesome. And I kind of had a choice between the two, and I went with CGF. But it really wasn't until that point, because I did get one gig in New York on my own, before I had an agent, and that was the lab production of Allegiance with Lea Salonga, George Takei. Like, that was a crazy thing to get out of the gate, right? Because I was in this room with all of these people I'd heard
Yeah.
of, and I was like, wow, I can't believe it,
Yeah.
like Lea Salonga is right there, um, and so that was like the first thing I did. But the doors really did start to open as far as like being able to go in for these different roles and stuff and be seen by casting directors and not just assistants,
Yeah.
because I had an agency. So it was really like, it wasn't really until that I felt like that really started to get traction.
Yeah. And were they the ones who sent you in for Rock of Ages?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that. Rock of Ages, was it just another audition? Was it purposely for the character of Drew? Was it a general audition? What was that like?
No, it was to replace, Justin Sargent was playing the lead at the time, and they were at the Helen Hayes, because Rock of Ages had two lives on Broadway. It was at the Brooks, and then it was at the Helen Hayes,
Mhm.
and they were looking for a young tenor, rock tenor, and some of the shows I cut my teeth on in Seattle was, and learning how to be a rock tenor was
Mhm.
like, was Rent at the Fifth Avenue, was Jesus Christ Superstar Village
Mhm.
Theater. So it's like I had done these rock shows, and like I felt like, hey, that's like
Also,
totally
I
my
just want to
wheelhouse. I
mention
can,
Jesus Christ Superstar because you did it 3 times. And when you
yeah,
were
it's a show
Jesus
I've done.
and yeah, you were one of the productions, you were Jesus and Judas. Like
Correct.
how
Yeah,
does
yeah.
that
That
work?
that was a that was a Brian Yorkie
Oh,
produced
interesting.
show, and Brian cast me and a guy named Michael K. Lee, who's also a Broadway guy. He lives in Korea. Um, and me and Michael, we would switch every show, and we did
Oh,
8 shows a
cool.
week. And we would,
Wow.
even on like a Saturday, one of us would be one in the matinee, and one of us would be the other character at night. So we would switch every time, and it was the hardest and the coolest thing I've
Yeah.
ever done. I mean, to play Jesus and Judas in the same production was crazy, and it was one of the coolest shows I've ever done to this
Yeah.
day.
Do you think
Yeah,
having to have switched the roles every night kind of helps you with understudying two different roles in Moulin Rouge, like
completely,
swinging different
completely.
parts?
Yeah. Because really what it is like you just put that in your brain. You
Hmm.
put that character, the blocking, the songs, the everything in your brain, and you learn it that way. And then you just, like a file cabinet, I just access it when I need to do it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I don't think about the Duke when I'm not doing the Duke. I don't think about Christian when I'm not doing Christian.
Hmm.
Um, but when I'm doing those roles, it's just almost kind of like you're just like, oh, download. Now I'm in the next, I'm like ready to go. And that was what it was like doing Jesus and Judas, because I didn't think about, when Mike was across from me playing Jesus and I was Judas, I didn't think about what he was doing as Jesus at all. I was like,
Yeah.
just, I'm me, and that was, so I think that was a really helpful skill, because I haven't, apart from really doing Moulin Rouge, I haven't really understudied. It's not really something I ever did. So that was like probably the one thing that I kind of learned a bunch from, was that early, yeah, Jesus Christ Superstar production.
Yeah. So let's go back to Rock of Ages. So what was it like when you got the call, like, oh, hey, by the way, you're going to be like making your Broadway debut as
Yeah.
the lead of a show, carrying the show like on Broadway? Like,
I don't think I knew. I mean, I knew and I didn't know. Like, I knew, like, I was like, this is crazy. But I also, yeah, I think there was like a little bit of a naivete of like, just like, oh man, I'm just grateful to be here. Like, this is cool. I didn't realize how fortunate and how like unusual that is to like just kind of jump into that sort of position. Um, but yeah, it definitely came out of nowhere. It was at the perfect time. Um, and yeah, I mean, it was like I got to do that show for a year and talk about like a masterclass in understanding how to do a Broadway schedule and how to prepare yourself, because you will never do anything unless you're doing the tour or on Broadway, ever do a schedule like this ever. I mean, Village Theater had 14-week runs, which is super long for regional theaters. And um, you don't even come close to doing a year of shows, right?
Yeah.
8 shows a week. Like that,
Yeah.
that sort of stamina that's required, that like you got to show up to work, even when it gets hard, even when you're tired, even when you're, it's like you don't get paid if you don't do a show. So
Yeah.
like Rock of Ages, it's such a hard saying, right? Like you're screaming your face off for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
That like I learned the muscle that is my voice. I learned, and I wasn't going to voice lessons. I was just learning, all like doing the
Yeah.
show every night, like how to take care of myself, how to like still have that. And it was that, I mean, that was like the best gift I could have been given. Obviously, just the fact that giving a leading role right off the bat is a gift, but like the fact that
Yeah.
I was able to like learn how to navigate the show every night when you're feeling 100%, when you're feeling 75%, when you're feeling 50%. Like how do you still get through this show and give a performance that you want people to see, and
Yeah.
that's a skill, because like I don't care who it is that you see on Broadway, like very rarely are you seeing them at their best, because
Yeah.
they are working 8 shows a week,
Yeah.
right? So like if they're able to fool you into thinking that was their best, like they are awesome, because that's the
Yeah.
job. That is the job. That's the
Yeah.
gig.
Did you ever have it? Because I felt like this kind of last time I saw Moulin Rouge. I'm like, they're giving so much and the audience is not giving it back. Like, did you ever have nights like that with Rock of Ages? Because I actually saw Rock of Ages at the Hayes. You were not my Drew. I don't remember the name of the person who was my Drew, but I know what he looks like.
Mhm.
And I just had like the best time. I wore my fake Madonna shirt that I got from Old Navy, so
Yeah.
I mean, we can definitely talk about that, especially with the other shows that you've done, but something like Rock of Ages, did you ever feel like the audience just wasn't like giving what you were receiving and vice versa? If that makes sense.
Oh, sure. But I mean, I think that happens all the time. That happens in any show you do. I mean, because like we're not Taylor Swift. Like we're not, like what we're doing
Let's
is not
not
like
mention
showing
her
up
on my
to a show where
podcast. I can't stand her.
we're,
I just want a day where she's
but
not
you know
there.
what I mean? Like
Yeah,
when she does a show, everybody is there for her and they are so stinking excited to be there.
yeah,
And a lot of times in a Broadway show, people are there and they were just the show that looked interesting, that they clicked, and they're, on, and they're coming to see it, and they know nothing about it and they don't really know anybody in the show. And it's like that's like our world, it's like, and you're going to have nights where the audience is all foreign. And by foreign, I mean, like they might not actually understand the dialogue.
yeah.
Like they're loving the songs, but
Hmm.
there's a reason why no one's laughing, because they don't actually understand what you're saying. And that's
Yeah,
totally fine. Like
yeah.
you just have to be okay with that,
I will say,
And
like,
like I
having
think,
worked in
yeah,
hospitality and doing merch, like the big show I worked at was Mamma Mia. Like when I would sell theater tickets, like people would go see Chicago, or like when Mamma Mia was on Broadway, they would see Mamma Mia because they're familiar
yeah,
with the
the
story and
songs.
the music.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But sorry, I
And I
interrupted
honestly
you
think
were saying something.
No, I think Moulin Rouge is in that world. I think that's
Yeah.
like what we're tapping into. It's like people know the movie, and people worldwide, and they're
Yeah.
familiar with the story, and the songs make it even easier because pop songs are worldwide, right? They've all heard these songs. So like I think it's easy for them to like enjoy and get into it. But like there's totally times when the audiences are really quiet and you're like not getting anything back. And it does make the show hard. Like that give and take between the actor and the audience is such a huge part of doing
Mhm.
your best and giving your best performance. But like yeah, you have to figure out how to make do when you're just not getting a lot back, because
Yeah.
then if you push harder, if you sing harder, if you try and be funnier, it just is worse. It just gets
Yeah.
worse. You just have to like just stay in your lane and do your thing. So
Has there
yeah.
ever been like, I know I'm a huge SNL fan, so I've like watched interviews and all that stuff over the years. And, there have been times where like two people from SNL, they talk about how, during like dress where a sketch just bombs and they know it's bombing, so they just go harder on it. Have you ever been in a performance where you just know that it's not working, so you just like, fuck it, let's just go crazy? Has that ever happened?
um yes, and it's usually because of like technical difficulties, or like something happens and you're like, let's just do it. Like a Rock of Ages, the power went out.
Oh,
Like one
great.
time we had no power,
Oh,
like no
wow.
sound, no nothing. And I remember the band coming up and they did like this acoustic thing, and the
Hmm.
audience was crazy and it was so fun.
Yeah.
Because it is that moment where you're like, all right, we can't get any worse. Like we'll just like go out there and have like someone go out there and tell jokes. Someone go out there and like have a good, it's like it's kind
Yeah.
of in those moments where you're just like, listen, like like
Yeah.
we're just here to entertain at the end of the day. So let's just entertain. Let's just have a good time, And like there's been shows like that for sure. Like Moulin Rouge, um, there's been like some funny moments where, like things have gone out or whatever has happened. And like, it's just funny how sometimes when that happens, like if it's at the top of the show, middle of the show, end of the show, the audience is so much more on your side. You know what I mean? Like they're so excited, to like
Yeah.
find out what's going to happen next. And, and like they know they witnessed something weird and
Yeah.
peculiar. And they're pumped to be a part of that, to be
Yeah.
like, oh, guess what? So-and-so went out of intermission, crazy, and then
Yeah.
someone came on. And, and for them, like that's as an actor, you're like maybe devastated if you're the one that had to go out intermission or whatever.
Yeah.
But like the audience is having a great time. Like, they're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is like for many, and not everybody, but for many, like they're like, this is fun, this is different, this is.
Yeah. I think people like when audiences like seeing when people break on stage. Like I saw Shucked I
Mhm.
think last month, and two of the actors just started laughing during like a song, and the audience went
Yeah,
crazy for it because they
crazy.
loved how they were just laughing
Yep.
and couldn't keep character.
That actually, Ashley and Aaron, I don't know if they'll ever listen to this, but I will tell this story.
Yeah.
That both of them, the story is great because Aaron Tveit does not break, just so
Mhm.
we're clear.
Yeah.
The man is a machine in
Yeah.
every way. He is just does it perfectly all the time.
Yeah.
So much respect for that dude. However, one night, him and Ashley, something happened at the top of ELM, and the entire song they laughed completely. Like, and if you know Elephant Love Medley, there's so much going on. It's 9 minutes of singing and being
Yeah.
silly, and and they're giggling and laughing the entire song. And for all of us on off stage and like watching this happen, we just like were like aghast. We could not believe that this was happening because everyone and like the audience was loving it. Like of course they're because like they're obviously they're having a good time. It's so silly that this is happening, and they're just kind of going with it. They're like, it is what it is,
Yeah.
and it was fun. But it was like it was just also a shock because being both of them don't break much, and Aaron especially. That was pretty funny that they were gone. They were two sheets to the wind. They were lost. It was
Yeah.
funny.
Watch next time you go on as Christian, something's going to happen during Elephant Love Medley, and you're just going to laugh the
Yes.
whole time with whomever is playing Satine at that moment.
Yeah, I mean, if it's funny, sure. If it's not funny, I might just cry through the rest of that song. Who knows?
Listen, just like, he's so in love with Satine, you can make it work. Like he's crying that he can't believe this moment is happening. Just like make it work for your character. Who was your
One, one.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say one time, and it might have been with JoJo.
Hmm.
Um, I had to do Christian, and it had been a minute, and my brain wasn't working. And one of the blocking things is like you go down on one knee, and she sits on your knee, or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, the blocking is like you sit in a chair, and she sits with you, and then you get up and you like
Yeah.
put a ring on her finger, and it's a whole thing. But in mine, I thought I was supposed to kneel, and she's supposed to sit on my knee, and they're all looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, no, I swear to God, I kneel and you sit on my knee. Well, we did that in the show, and I was like, this is absolutely not right at all. And it was I was so embarrassed because then like I got like notes like, why did you do that? And I was like, I thought that's what I was supposed to do, but I was so it's like even in our brains we can make stupid mistakes because we've done it so many times and you can't
Yeah.
remember in that moment. It was funny.
You brain fart. I do have to ask that. I'm curious. So like what happens so I think it was like last year where Aaron Tveit like went into the show for a night, like
Mhm.
after he left. Like how and why did that happen? Were like you and the other understudies not available? Like how does that work in the world of Broadway?
Yeah. So I was out sick that night. It was a Saturday. In the show, the matinee, I was out for the evening show, and the other cover in the building was Dylan Paul, and Dylan for whatever reason was out. So because Derek had already left, he was already on his way home. I was in New Jersey, um, they're like they went to DEF CON 9, how to save the show, and Aaron
Yeah.
got a phone call. So
Wow.
that's kind of how it all worked out. I mean, like obviously, like that sort of situation is so rare that like everybody would like dominoes, like kind of be like
Yeah.
out.
Well, but like was Derek
But that
like
was
called
yeah.
out already for that night or they couldn't bring him back?
Mhm. Yeah, he'd already called out, and when I called out sick, I was really early, so they actually came back around to me. I'm like,
Mm.
"Do you think you could do it?" I'm like, "I don't know, just let me know." if something, you know, if you can't, whatever. And then
Yeah.
they never came back to me. So I knew they found somebody. And then Ricky Rojas texted me and was like, dude, Aaron's on tonight. And I was like, that's great. So it was a
Yeah.
fun one night only for these super
Yeah.
fans who could catch the show.
Oh yeah. Oh, there's so many clips on the social media about him in it
Yeah.
and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So just, curious. So who's your
And I think
sh-
for him, it was like one of the more fun shows he'd done, right? Because he wasn't like ready to do it, or like he wasn't thinking about it. He just was like showed up ready to have fun and see what he, was in his body for the night, and he had a great time, so it was fun for him too to like to do
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
He
I'm-
likes challenges, he
Yeah.
enjoys it.
Well, I mean, he's about to play Sweeney Todd, so I don't think there's
Yeah.
more of a challenge than playing Sweeney Todd. Because, when I ask a lot of
Yeah.
people dream roles, they go, I'd love to play Sweeney. It's a common one, and that could be one of yours. But
Yeah, maybe.
I'm curious, who is your Sherry in Rock of Ages? Just out of plain
I
curiosity.
had two. I
Oh,
mean, I had lots, right? I had lots, but
mhm.
the two main ones were, I started with Kate Rockwell.
Nice.
She was my Sherry for probably more than 6 months. And then I had Carrie St. Louis, and she was
Nice.
my final Sherry. Mm-hmm.
Very nice. I was just curious, because there were so many wonderful people who played Sherry. So out of
Mm-hmm.
plain
Yeah,
curiosity. So
and I got to play it with Katie Weber. I got to play with Erica Hunter. I got to play it with, there's several.
yeah. So
So
I'm curious about this. You did It Shoulda Been You regionally, right?
yes,
And then you did it on
it was done in Village Theater
okay, with a
in
different
Seattle
director.
when I was mhm,
And then
years before.
okay.
Mhm.
And
Years before. I mean, like maybe 4 years
yeah.
before the Broadway production. Yeah.
hmm And then
And then when it came up,
yeah,
yeah.
sorry, I'm interrupting you. Continue with your story about It Shoulda Been You.
No, no, I was going to say how it worked was, yeah, it came up and they were going to do a production of it. And then they sent me in and they're like, we just need, it's already cast,
hmm
but we need someone who knows or can do both of the guys in the wedding, right?
Yeah.
Party. Um, and I went in and saw Brian and saw David, and they were like, Aaron, perfect, and they gave me
Yeah.
the part, and I was like, great. So I was initially the standby for the two guys because it's
Mhm.
an ensemble show,
Yeah.
and then David Burka
Yeah.
got had to have vocal surgery fairly early on
Yeah.
in the run, and so he had to leave us. And so they were just like, all right, boom. So I ended up playing the role of Brian the groom opposite Sierra Bogus for the remainder of the run.
Yeah. I always, whenever I
That
hear
was a
it,
fun one.
yeah, whenever I hear It Should Have Been You, it always reminds me of a story when I was concierging, how this like mother and daughter came up to me, and I prided myself at being really good at picking out shows for people, and it was like a Monday night, and I was like, oh, I think you guys are gonna really like It Should Have Been You, blah blah blah, and you have to write on a piece of paper like the show that they're seeing so they can sign it, and I even wrote down on a notepad the pricing and everything, that and Avenue Q, and I was like, no, I think you'll like this one better. They came up to me the next day claiming that I sold them the wrong theater tickets and that they wanted to see Avenue Q. And then they complained to the management of the hotel that I spoke too fast and they wanted their money back. Like it was this whole big thing. And I was like, no. And then my managers were like, they probably didn't like the show and they wanted their money back and they were lying about it. But like I
Maybe.
yeah, and I said to them like, no, I have it written down on a paper because normally like I threw out the paper like to have a fresh one the next day. But if people like called in or emailed in about like getting tickets in advance, I would always keep that scrap paper with that information. And that's what it was. So I was like, no, it should have been you. Sorry.
That's
And so
hilarious.
I always think of that story whenever I hear the title of It Should Have Been You.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So
I think,
let's talk about Kinky Boots. How did that come into your life? And your first hurrah at the Hirschfeld.
yeah, my first time at the Hirschfeld. It was great. Kinky Boots, like once again, like it was. I hope people like realize that like very few of us are like blessed to just go from show to show to show. And it had been
Yeah.
because like Diner happened between that. Like you mentioned Diner, like
Yeah.
I was like working on that show regionally. There's some other things, but like there was a drought for sure.
Yeah.
and and then Kinky Boots came along, and I knew it wasn't going to be a long stint. So that's always kind of hard when like you go in for a show and you're like, well, they only need someone for 6 months, and then they
Yeah.
have another person coming in.
Mhm.
Killian, who was from the UK, he played it
Yeah.
out there, so he was coming in always. So I knew like I had this short little time. So I think because of that, it was like the most bittersweet but like wonderful thing because I knew I was like owning the building for 6 months or whatever,
Yeah.
and I just had so much fun because I was like there every night. I was soaking it in because I knew it was such a limited run, for
Yeah.
me. Um, I got to deal with two amazing Lolas. I mean, Alan Mango Jr. is just like he's coming with the Wiz, coming
Yeah.
soon, and then I put Todrick Hall into the show, and and made great friends of all of them, but also like talk about like the crew and the backstage. Like a lot of them are still there from when I
Yeah.
did Kinky Boots, and like the relationships I have with them are like so tight because like I like came in, was super pumped to be there, made friends with all of them, and then came back with Moulin Rouge, and that was such a
Yeah.
fun like kind of homecoming for me because Kinky Boots ran for like 5 or 6 years, which is a great
Yeah.
run. And I only did like a snippet of that, that
Yeah.
time period, but you're still part of that family. And Kinky Boots,
Yeah.
like what a sweet, wonderful show
Yeah.
that I had so much fun doing it. It was it was just so out of left field for me. I never thought I'd get to do a show like that. And it was a
Yeah.
blast. It was so
Well,
much fun.
I'm
I
really
got to do an
grateful.
accent on Broadway. What?
You were British. You were
I'm
British. You
British.
wore
Yeah.
heels. You got to sing Cyndi Lauper music. Harvey Firestein
Yep.
works, directed by Jerry
Yep.
Mitchell. Not too
Yep.
shabby. Hold on, I have to cough. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
That didn't come out like I wanted. Anyway, so I was going to ask, and you did bring it up kind of before we get into, Moulin Rouge, even though we did talk about it. The in-between show stuff, because you've also been a part of a lot of workshops. I'm also like really August Rush, Diana, which I think, August Rush is pretty cool. And I'm kind of surprised there hasn't been more stuff out there or they
Yeah.
didn't do more with that. Um, and you also did Diner. So, in between doing It Shoulda Been You, Rock of Ages, Kinky Boots, Moulin Rouge, what were you doing? Auditioning, regional concerts? Like what were you doing? Did you ever have to
Yeah.
go
I mean, it was
explaining?
a lot of that. I mean, you're just like, because an actor, like you just like have a toolbox like anything, and you're just kind of like picking out of that what you need in that moment. And I think in between shows it was like, okay, I can go do some concert work, so I did do that. I did like a couple rock and roll shows. I did regional stuff. I did a production, like I did a JCS production, I did a production of Evita, I did Diner twice, 3 times. Oh, I
Wow.
don't know how many times. Where we
I'm
were
surprised
constantly
that didn't
workshopping
like
that show.
come to anything either. It just kind of like happened and
I mean, the inside story on that is, and I think a lot of people know, is that the truth is like we were coming to Broadway,
yeah.
but, and there's always in this business a lot of buts. We were
Hmm.
coming to Broadway, but we didn't have a theater yet,
Hmm.
and Waitress announced. When
Hmm.
that happened, we were toast. I
Yeah.
mean, because the truth is, theaters owners didn't want to put us into a theater in the same season as Waitress when you have Diner and Waitress, two names that are so
Yeah.
similar and confuse audiences,
Mhm.
right? For like which ones they're going to or why see one versus the other. Two singer songwriter female driven shows, right?
Yeah.
Cheryl Crow, all the music for our show, Sarah
Yeah.
Bareilles for Waitress. So like in that moment, we all kind of knew we were sunk.
Yeah.
And the problem is when you're doing these out of towns, there are stories obviously like they've done an out of town and then several years go by and then they finally go to Broadway. But usually the momentum is best, kind of like
Yeah.
what Gatsby did, right? Or whatever, like that are coming this season. Like they do their out of town and then they announce their Broadway run and they kind of try and take some momentum into that season. And they usually have their cast still established. They didn't lose anybody because time
Yeah.
hasn't gone on. And time kept ticking on Diner. And I just was like, yeah, it's not going to happen. And I mean, like that show was so special to me because obviously I love Kathleen Marshall, who was the director. Working with Barry Levinson was crazy because he's just such a Hollywood directorial legend. And but then Cheryl's music, none of you have heard it.
Yeah.
It's so good. Like
Yeah.
I mean, she wrote some amazing songs for that show, but then it was also performed by some of my favorite people. I mean, I always like, in your Facebook memories, I get a snap, like there's a snapshot I took of our dressing room door, and it was like Derek Klena, me, Ethan Slater, Matthew James Thomas. Like, I mean, you can just like go down the board. I'm like,
Yeah.
that was our dressing room for diner. You know what I mean? Like, just all these Broadway studs, and so it's such a bummer to like to lose that.
So
But it was a fun experience.
this is what you're going to do when you do the Aaron C. Finley podcast, and then you get popularity with it, and then you do like a Ricky Rojas type of concert. You're going to
Yeah.
gather the diner people together, especially Derek Klenick, because he's going back into Moulin Rouge, and you're going to
Yep. We'll
sing
see him in a minute.
songs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're going to sing, you're just going to do like, hey guys, this is Diner. Or, I mean, 54 Below always does types of concert stuff. Like, I'm sure there could be a diner night one night.
Yep. I think it's a great idea. I mean, I still have Cheryl's phone number, so maybe I can ask permission to use her songs.
You can have him be like, hey, I was just on this podcast and I was like given an idea. Or have her come
This
on
is true.
your soon to be podcast, yet to be named, or like the Aaron C. Finley pod, whatever
Mm-hmm.
you name
Yep.
it. And
Yep.
just be like, let's talk diner. And can we
Why
do a
not?
concert, or a concept album, if anybody's out there listening, I always look at my microphone like it's people. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
audience. Yeah.
I
It
love
can
that.
happen. You never know. Yeah. But I understand that. It is hard, I think, when there's two types of, I know that they have a Karate's Kid musical that they want to bring to Broadway, and I have some inside information about it because I know somebody who works on the production side of it. So I don't want to give anything away that they've told me, but you know, I was like, oh, is it coming this season? Oh no, you have something like Back to the Future. So you can,
Exactly. Yep.
yeah, I understand it. I get it.
Yeah.
So should we talk about it? How did the Rouge come into your life? Because you weren't in Boston, right? You didn't do Boston?
No.
Okay.
No, yeah, so I was the only non cast member. Like, I'm the only on stage cast member
Mhm.
that was brand new for Broadway company. So everyone else did Boston. And then
I feel like I know
um
who you replaced, but I don't want to name drop on the podcast. So I'm not,
Joe.
yeah,
Joe.
Joe
Yeah.
Carroll. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
had him on. Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. So Joe got a good gig, right? He went to Frozen. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
And so when he left the production after Boston, yeah, it came up on my radar and just like, you know what, this is a show that I need to be in. I want to be in. It had been a minute since I had done a show. You have all of your actor doubts. I'll never work again. We all think that.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just like prepared my butt off for the show and went in for it. And I mean, I've been chasing Tveit my entire life. I feel like we've always kind of done the same sorts of roles. Um, uh, and we've always had like a lot of the similar people in our lives. We have the same interests. And I'm
Mhm.
like, if they need someone to back him up, I'm the guy. Like I can
Is it,
do
I
all
have
those
to
things.
say it. I mean, maybe I'll regret saying it because you also kind of look alike. Is that another thing as well?
We're
Have you
like the
had
same
that
age. Our
attitude?
birthdays are like 3 days apart. Like it's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird. So it's like, like he's just always been a part of my story in like a really roundabout way. I don't know if he realizes that, but that's definitely the case. And when it came along, I was like, this is perfect. And
Yeah.
thankfully Alex Timbers thought the same thing. And so,
Yeah.
I got to take over. And I mean, I was already told by so many people, like if they because I haven't, like I said, I haven't really done ensemble stuff, but
Yeah.
I could care less. I was like, I
Yeah.
want a job and I want it
Yeah,
to
well,
run.
you were in the ensemble of Aida, so you do have that.
Yes, back in the day.
So
Yeah, that's true.
yeah,
So
you're
for me, it
almost
was like,
killed, but you have it.
yeah, there's a reason
Yeah.
why I don't do ensemble work is because of my accidental almost death. So
It's
I
leads
think
or
for me,
nothing.
it was kind of the perfect situation because I was like, well, I can totally. I mean, Moulin Rouge is a beast, right? You have a 28 million dollar production, and there's a lot at stake when you're playing the leads in these shows. You really have to like, they're giving you a lot of responsibility, to
Yeah.
run and to lead one of these shows. And so, I felt honored that like I could be their number two if, if Tveit's not in that night or whatever. And unfortunately, it took me 7 or 8 months before I ever went on
Yeah.
because he's legendary in that regard.
Yeah.
So I kind of twiddled my thumbs for a long period of time, and then he finally went on his vacation. He took a vacation,
Yeah.
and I was also debuting. over these last few years, 4, 5, 6 years, I've gotten involved in the symphony world, and I have two symphonies that I do all
Mhm.
over the
Oh,
country.
we'll
And
talk about it. Don't worry. We'll talk. You
yeah, but
beautiful
but in that
talents. Yeah.
same time, yeah. So it was like this is like the funny thing about Moulin Rouge is if you kind of fast forward that first year of Moulin Rouge is that I was just in my track there every day. If they needed
Yeah.
me, they needed me, and having a great time with this incredible original company. And then February comes around. Tveit takes his vacation at the end of February. I go on, play that role. I debut my brand new Phil Collins and Genesis Symphony at Philly Pops the following weekend. So like two like monumental milestone, you
Hmm.
know, moments for my life.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic happens a week later. We shut down Moulin Rouge, the world, everything. So it was like
Yeah.
literally it was like the biggest highs of my life to like not working again for for a year and a half. So yeah, that was kind of the quick version of that time.
Yeah. Were you hired for understudying the Duke as well, or was that added on a little bit
Mm-hmm.
later? Yeah.
No, it was that was a part of it initially too. Was
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean like yeah, Tam was there every day too. I mean like that original cast, they just
Yeah.
didn't miss much because there's Tony voting happening. You know all that how that stuff goes. So.
Yeah. And then they won all of the Tonys and all of the land.
Oh yeah, we didn't have a ton of competition. Let's just put that out there. Like, just get that off the shelf. I mean, we didn't have a ton, but it was a good haul. That was a fun
Yeah.
night. So
I
that
mean,
was a good
Aaron
deal.
definitely had a ton of competition in his category. Yeah. No, I said it. I made the joke. Thank you. But I made the sarcastic joke about something and somebody like put their little like theater cap on. It was like, well, technically, even though he's the only one nominated, he might not win. He only needs this amount of the votes. It's like that's kind of true. Like imagine if he lost the Tony, which could have
Yeah,
happened.
yeah.
Yeah.
Can you? But
I
also, I feel like is though although we don't give a lot of credit to the Broadway League, I feel like some of them have empathy
yeah.
and what you would do to a person if that were to happen. I just feel like would be beyond the pale a little bit.
Listen, I've seen Moulin Rouge a bunch of times. I've seen him perform Roxanne. There was no way he wasn't winning that Tony.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like he was doing some superhuman things up there and he
Yeah.
totally deserved it. And like people always bring that up. Well, they could have not given it to him. And I'm like, what human being would do that to someone?
Yeah.
That's terrible,
Yeah. I
because
think
that would
like
be
yeah.
awful.
I with me aging and I like watch a show and I'm just like I'm so exhausted listening to this person sing. Like I don't know how they can do it 8 times a week. And I'm like, oh, Aaron
Yeah.
Tveit is just he's a machine and a beast. And I agree with all of those things because he's like very known for never calling out, always being on point, all that stuff. So getting back
Mhm.
to you and setting aside our fangirlness of Aaron Tveit that you and I both share apparently. Um, so what was it like to get the call, or did you know that you were going on as Christian that first time?
I knew what was going on.
Hmm.
Yeah, all my adventures with Christian really began after the pandemic.
Hmm.
So the first time I did it was was rough because there was so much buildup. The amount of people that had come up to me in the building that I work with every day, being like,
Hmm.
"Are you ready to go on? Are you excited? Are you gonna? It's gonna be great. I can't wait. You're gonna do it. It's gonna be sweet." You know what I mean? There's way too much buildup. It was 7+ months of buildup, and that was awful. It was
Yeah.
terrible. So to rip that band-aid off was of relief. It felt so good to just do the show that I knew I could do. And playing opposite Karen Olivo is a dream of mine, and it was everything I'd hoped for more. She's fabulous. Um, it's not hard to play a lovesick person from Ohio who feels like he could never deserve this woman when you're playing opposite Karen Levo because she is just presence is just
Yeah.
insane. I just love doing the show with her. And so that was just like kind of ripping the band-aid off and jumping into Christian and learning what it takes to do that show every night, because every single person who's played Christian on that stage has done something superhuman. Like, I don't care. I will debate the Elphabas and the others till I'm blue in the face. I think it's one of the hardest shows on Broadway easily to do is Christian. It is ridiculously challenging. So yeah. So I didn't have to like worry too much because I knew it was happening. And then it was actually after the pandemic that like little stuff like COVID and people coming in with a fever and, people calling out at intermission and me going on mid-show, that's all stuff that's happened after the pandemic. Those fun
Yeah.
Christian experiences have all been later on in the run for me. So
Yeah. And what about the Duke? What was it like going on the first time for that role?
um so fun, because the Duke, I've never gotten to play like a villain. Do we consider Judas a villain? I mean, he's just misunderstood, right? So let's pretend that like the Duke is the only villain I've ever played. So much fun to play the bad guy, right? Especially like the sexy bad guy that you're like trying to make the audience like you, and
I told, like
there's
I
something
said,
fun about
before
that.
we started, we were talking about the Duke's costume and like his like first act costume with the sheer top and the vest is so
Hmm.
sexy. I love that
Yep.
costume so much. I'm slightly obsessed with
Yep.
it. And every time I've seen Moulin Rouge, I feel like I like internally drool, like, oh my God, it's so
Right.
perfect.
Oh, for sure. And
Mhm.
David Harris too, man. He's just, eye candy as well. So it's like it's one of those things where like doing that role is so different. So
Yeah.
different from what I've always done, I've always done roles like Christian. So like to do that role, it's so fun to like jump into that sort of world. And the show compared to Christian is so easy. Like just the workload, we call it the princess track in the building. It completely is the
Yeah.
princess track. And like, listen, if Tam were in this screen right next to me right here, I would look at him and I'd say, you had the princess track, and he knows it. Is that like it's just so much fun to do, and like so little pressure in comparison to having to do Christian every night. So that was great. I loved doing it. It was fun.
Well, I did have Tam on the podcast and he didn't mention the princess track, but he also never had to like also perform Christian. So, you
This is
know,
true. But he's also done very difficult roles, like not saying taking anything away
yeah,
from what he can do,
yeah,
but he was living the high life as the Duke. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think that kind of works also for the Duke's character,
Hmm.
you know. So you're a couple of years into the show. What makes you want to stay? Do you find anything new, fun, and exciting with the ensemble? Like what keeps you there?
Um, I mean, I think the first reason that keeps me there is that, like, for me, I'm a dad. I have two kids. One's a junior in high school. The other one's an eighth grader. So for me to like have a steady gig in this industry is such a gift. Like there's just so few.
Yeah,
So for me, like it's as simple as that. Like that's why I haven't been doing other leads in other shows and leaving and doing things, because I enjoy the fact that I finally have a show that can run longer than that. And being a principal, like
yeah,
that's like the unsettling reality is like, as a principal, your job is never going to last very long. It's always going to be pretty fleeting. So I can stay in Moulin Rouge as long as I want, and I will stay
yeah.
in Moulin Rouge as
Is
long as I
that like
want,
written in
because
your
they can't.
contract? Like Aaron will never leave.
I mean, at the moment, that's the joke around the building. I'm
Yeah.
like, I am not going anywhere anytime soon for now. But I think like I also I also enjoy what I do and the new people that come into the show and meeting new people and creating new. I think that like one of the most important things that we tend to skip over about doing theater is that you have what the people see, have
Yeah.
what we do on that stage, right? And the performing aspect of it. That's one aspect of what we do. But we also have all the stuff that happens behind the scenes and backstage. And
Yeah.
so and I'm proud of my backstage track. I'm proud of the little things that I do goofily with Eric Anderson or whoever that I do every show, and I see them and we have some little bit that we do, or I'm interacting with so and so, and my dressers or whoever it is, and like that keeps me coming back to the show as much as anything. It's like, I feel like if I'm out of the show, people miss the little things that I do, not just me on stage, and that's also a fun part
Yeah.
of being in a long running show is like I have probably too many silly bits and things that I do off stage and on,
Yeah.
that keep me energized and having fun doing the same thing over and over again for I think I'm at 1,000 shows. I think I've done 1,000 shows in Moulin Rouge. So yeah.
Do they also keep track of like how many shows you've done as Christian or the Duke or the ensemble?
I think so. Yeah, I don't know exactly my numbers because they're having issues last time I asked because I have not done a good job of keeping track of it. But I think I'm in the like 150s as Christian, maybe in the 50s as Duke, and yeah, like over 1,000 shows in general. So it's been crazy.
So you also mentioned that you started to do these symphony concerts. Do you want to talk a little bit
Mhm.
more about how that came to fruition and the idea behind it? Because it's pop symphony concert celebrating 80s and Phil Collins music, or at least that's what I saw somewhere written down. And
Yeah.
Genesis, yeah. So how did that come about?
No, I
Was
mean,
it, go ahead.
sheer luck. The symphony world is so hard to get into, unless your name is Kristen Chenoweth, or Leslie Odom Jr. or whoever it is right now. It's like they're the ones that typically are performing and doing those shows, and the symphony world is like it's just a big gig, and it's crazy to think like this summer I'm doing the music of Phil Collins and Genesis, one of my symphony shows, and I'm doing it at the Chautauqua Institute in New York. We're doing and they always bring in, it's a kind of a cool summer long programs of all these different artists, and you can go to lectures and you can do all things. And then the weekend following me is Renee Fleming with
Oh,
that
wow.
symphony. So it's like for me, I get to be in this world that like is really kind of a dream as well because I just enjoy performing and singing. And obviously, like no one's cast me in Les Mis yet, so I haven't gotten to do a whole lot of like legit stuff. But the symphonies that I've been doing are all 80s rock, which I learned in Rock of Ages really well. Phil Collins stuff, which is it's also like my wheelhouse. So they're just so fun to do. And I auditioned for a symphony gig once, and then fell into this with this conductor. His name's Stuart Chaffetz, and we've been doing these symphonies for like probably 4 or 5 years now, and it's just so much fun. I just got back from one from Columbus this weekend. I did the
Yeah.
music of Phil Collins. So yeah, it's just like it's that actor toolbox I mentioned. It's like it's just one of those things that to have gigs like that can help support you and put money in your bank account so that you can you know time off from shows, or you can do whatever. Like that's always super helpful because everybody needs to take time away from their show. Everybody, you need to like reset, do all these things. And I'm going to take a leave of absence from Moulin Rouge in the middle of February through for about a month and just do symphonies for 4 weeks, and that'll be great because then I can kind of come back refreshed and
Yeah.
ready to get again, get after it again.
We'll have to let me know because I do want to see Boy George in the show. So if
Yep.
I'll have to see him once you're back. So I'll be like, oh, hey, I'm seeing the
Yes.
show. Or at least like now that I know that you do little bits and now that I quote unquote like know you, I'll have to like keep an eye out on that. Cause like I said, last time I saw the show, I was like eyeing you. I was like, up, he's coming on. I need to see what he's doing on the stage.
Yep. Yep.
But I was a lottery seat, so I was all the way left orchestra. So it was
Yes. Over to
slightly
the yeah. Mhm.
partial. Yeah, slightly partial, which I was very surprised about because it was my third time winning the lottery at Moulin Rouge. And the first two times I literally had the same exact seat. And this time
Huh. Interesting.
it was so weird. It was the two times it was front orchestra side on the aisle seat. So I'm like, this is perfect. I can just run to the bathroom. But
That's
then
amazing.
yeah, and then it was just orchestra all the way on the side. And yeah, you
Great.
never know where those lottery seats are.
You
So
never know. It's a
yeah,
gamble. It's a
gamble.
gamble.
Yeah. So let's talk about, do you have any top going theater experiences?
Oh, so the one thing about doing Broadway as a job is it's
Mhm.
very hard to go to shows,
Yeah.
only because very rarely do you have a different schedule than said shows. And if you do, a lot of times it's like, hey, we'll go on a Monday, see a show. And
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, the last thing I want to do is go to Midtown on my day off.
I
So I
get it.
I don't see a ton of shows.
Well, just like in your
I sent
lifetime, it doesn't have to be like I've been seeing shows since I was
I
five
was trying
years
to
old.
think of recent. I was trying to think of recent.
Oh,
Yeah.
listen, like I say like once Danny Burstein and Beth Level and Jersey Chaperone,
Oh
great.
my gosh. I would have given anything to see them in that. I think what's funny, I'll say this one. I think that when I first got to New York and my friends were showing me around,
Mhm.
the first show I saw was The Mystery of Edwin Drood. And that was so much fun. And I was like, wow, this is super cool. I love Broadway. And then I went and saw a little show called Peter and the Starcatcher. And to know that my director directed that show, or was one of the two directors on that show, and to
Yeah.
know how much I was just in love with the storytelling of that whole show and
Mhm.
that cast and everything, and to know that like all these years later, to know several of them and to have worked with and to be like, I think that's like those are like the theater going things I think about now. It's like those are like the first two shows I saw, and yeah, and to be like one of them to be like my director eventually on Broadway, right? Like how crazy is that? So
Well, let's add to this then. So if you know, because your Broadway schedule prevents you from seeing stuff, do you have any like theater going experiences that you've worked on that are very memorable or top for you? Even if
in like
it's
what way?
just like, something that sticks with you, like I worked on, well, Diner is probably one of them. Just like any,
Yeah, diner. I mean, yeah, there's just all these moments. It's like it's all these moments where you kind of like the pinch yourself moments sort of thing. Um, we'll go back to my first theater experience in New York. So we're in rehearsals for Allegiance, and it's the lab production,
Mhm.
and I'm kind of like, wow, I can't believe I'm in this room with all these people, and like I'm getting to know Leia Salonga, which is so fun. And one day, she is, we're in the middle of rehearsal, and this gentleman walks in, and um, Leia runs to him and like breaks down into tears, and they're hugging and they're talking to each other, and I was just kind of like watching this whole moment, like, wow, what's going on? Like, I wonder who that is. Like, not a clue, you know. And it was John Kander who had walked into the room, and she's having this conversation with him, and he's so excited to see me. He's like, sweet, and then you and that was like the first moment where I was like, you just realize that you're now kind of just a part of the history of what we do, and that's like for me, like I love history, history buff, and I don't know, like my Broadway IQ is not super high, but like I've gotten better at it over the years. But like I just remember like that moment watching her so excited about being in his presence and seeing him and him just like kind of just randomly walking into our rehearsal room,
Mhm.
and then to me, like fast forward a few years, and I'm doing a thing at the 92nd Street Y, and my son is meeting um, Sheldon Harnick and his wife Marjorie, and we're all just like taking pictures and chatting, and we're just talking to Sheldon about everything. He's like the sweetest man, and I'm like, this is the man behind Fiddler on the Roof, one of my favorite musicals of all time.
Yeah.
And I'm just like in this space, with him, and he's taking pictures with my kids, and and we're about to do this like show that he's a part of, and it was like those are like the moments I think that stick with me the most as far as theater stuff goes.
Now I have to ask, out of my own personal curiosity, because I too am a bit of a history nerd. I love it. What piques your interest with history? Is there a particular time period or location? Like I like Renaissance, Tudor history, British history, like early colonial American history. Like that's my jam.
I love, yes. I would say for me, probably US history in like I would say like maybe Revolution through Civil War stuff I find really fascinating. I also love world history, like ancient, like Greeks,
Mhm.
Egyptian, Roman era stuff is like interesting to learn. Although, like, remember that thing that was going around about like how often do men think about the Roman
The
Empire or
Roman
something?
Empire.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't. I don't think about the
Yeah.
Roman Empire
And then
like
people are
ever
like,
really.
what's your Roman
But
Empire? And it's like food.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Although I
I think
will
about
say
that more.
yeah, I was watching the Emmys and I took a photo of Tina Fey and Amy Poehler doing their presentation and I wrote, "This is my Roman Empire." It's not, but I just thought it would be a funny joke.
That's a good one. That's great. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I
All
love
right.
history. So I went to London over the summer and I did a tour of the globe, and then I did a tour of the Tower of London, and it was like, and I saw a show that night and it was the most niche day for me. It's like, "Oh, you're doing a tour of Shakespeare's Globe and a tour of the Tower of London." What, like, that is that has my name written all over
That's
it.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That would be fun.
Yeah. So, do you have any
Mhm.
dream roles or projects or like even people you want to work with?
Um, I kind of briefly mentioned earlier, I think I mean one of the I'm gonna let you in on an inside Moulin Rouge joke. One of the
Okay.
things I think about in my head
Hmm.
when I'm at the end of the show is Christian. And he gets up and he goes, "So that's how a young man came to Paris to find himself."
Hmm.
That's the line he says.
Yeah.
And in my brain, I'm thinking, so that's how a middle-aged man came to Paris to find himself. Because I am post Tveit era by far the oldest Christian to be playing this role around the world. And I feel like I'm entering a moment in my life where I will not be playing romantic leads for much longer. And I'm totally awesomely cool with that. And I can't wait to do like I 5 years ago auditioned and they wanted me to go in for the Phantom and not Raoul. And so I sang Phantom stuff. And I was like, wow, I'm like not old enough to do this, and I don't feel, capable. But those are the roles that are starting to come to my brain. Like I'm ready to do a Valjean. I'm ready to like jump in and like do some of these shows that like are so different from what I've been doing for the past 10 years, and I'm aging into. I'm like in an age where I feel like I'm right for that, you know. I would say that is what I'm excited about doing. Like moving out of this like romantic leads, mushy mushy, lovey lovey, sing high and
I'm
sweet
going to
and
stop you
into
there
that.
because there is the Bridges of Madison County. So you do
I
have
would
that.
love to do that role.
So
Sure.
you have
Although
Robert.
I'm in love with that man's voice, and he is, I don't think I could do that role justice, but I would give it a shot.
Listen, you don't know.
I
You don't
don't.
know until you
You're
try.
absolutely right. I don't. I
Yeah.
don't.
I'm just saying that's like a
Agreed.
romantic
A
lead
good, an older romantic lead. I could do that too.
is a certain, and listen, there might be another age appropriate. I don't know how old you are. I'm not asking. Age appropriate, at least you think would be an age appropriate role romantically that hasn't been written yet. You don't know.
That's true. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. But I do think I want to do a show that doesn't have that like I can safely say that if a 8-year-old came that I wouldn't get in trouble because the show content wasn't appropriate. Because I typically do like some of the shows that I've done, my kids couldn't see until they were a little bit older because you don't want to have to explain certain things. So like maybe someday I'll do like a super family friendly something. Because Moulin Rouge is like is ish, but not. You know what I mean? Like ish,
I
but
will
like
say,
not.
like, it probably goes over. I went to see Mean Girls last week, and there were like 10-year-olds there, and I was like, this
Yeah.
shouldn't be
Right. Right.
by, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I saw Les Mis when I was 5, so
Yeah. That's heavy. That's heavy. That's a lot. That's a lot on a little person for sure.
oh yeah, for
It's a
years
lot
I
on a big person.
yeah, for years I complained to my mom, like, you don't take a 5-year-old to see Les Mis. And after years of saying that, she finally said, you need to get over it. The tickets were free. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Would you want to do any plays or any the classical work, or you just mostly want to stick to doing the musical side of stuff?
Anything. I would do it. I think, I mean, honestly, it's just how the industry works. It's just hard. It's hard to do those unless you're a name or you've come off a Hollywood, sort of lot. That's how you get into a play. I mean, I think I did a play professionally called Enchanted April back when I was in Seattle, and it was so much fun because I didn't have to sing, and I loved it. I was like, this is great. Um, but I haven't done one since, and I would love to do a play. But
Yeah.
it's like, but at the end of the day, too, it's like I can't afford to do a play. That sort of
Yeah.
feeling. like I don't like I love theater, but I also don't do theater for fun. I do it because it's a living. So
Yeah. Would you also want to do any like television and film or get into that aspect of the
a
industry?
1000%. But it's such a different lane. You kind of have to like be swimming in that ocean
Mhm.
full time. It's tough. It's tough to do theater, and because our schedules don't play nice with shoot schedules. So like you have to have like either a TV show that's used to working with theater actors a lot, like everybody has their SVU story or like Law and Order stuff. So I would love to do it. I kind of have to like put a bunch of eggs in that basket, and I've just been like hesitant or just haven't quite gotten to that. But hopefully, like that could be my 2024 goal, is to like
Yeah.
book some things, some
Yeah.
on camera stuff would be fun.
Well, I mean, for years, Chris Sieber had in his bio, Chris Sieber has never appeared on Law and Order or like any of the Law and
Yeah,
Orders. And then he was
that's so
finally,
smart.
yeah, and then he was finally on an episode of Law and Order SVU, so we had to take it out of his bio.
I can I put that on mine? Because
I
I
would,
haven't. I want
why
to do it. I
not?
want to put that on mine. Yeah,
Sure.
I'll
I
do it on
mean,
mine. I have
feel
not.
like
Danny
stolen from
Burstein, I was talking with him one day. I'm like, I haven't even played like a garbage man on SVU, and he's like, "What? You need to get on Law and Order." So
I
hasn't
think
happened yet,
I think they made fun of Danny Burstein at one of the Tony Awards once about like how many times he's appeared on like different Law and Orders.
dude.
Yeah,
That guy, love him.
yeah,
So talented and
yeah,
on everything.
yeah. And just from what I've been told, just like the kindest person. And we're moving on. So,
Oh, sorry.
no, it's fine. So we were talking about before we recorded, and I think it's important for people listening talking about theater etiquette, especially like if you work in a theater.
Mhm.
So do you want to talk a little bit more about it? Because I said, front of house staff, like they talk, they know everything. That's why I always say, like, you should just be nice to everybody once you're in a theater.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, yeah, I think that it's not like going. I just think people just need to be reminded that it's not like going to the movies.
Yeah,
It's a very different experience, and I think it's sacred in that way, that like you need to. I mean, it doesn't kill you to dress up a little bit, it's like a nice evening out. It's something fun to do, and it's fine. Listen, if you can only show up in jeans and a t-shirt, I get it. Like, come to the show. Like, butts and seats are always the best kind. But it's like, I love that the theater is an event. It's something that you can do with your family, that can be like a fun once a year gift, you know, that kind of moment where it does have like kind of a special kind of mountaintop experience associated with it, not necessarily like, oh, this is just, we're just going to go see another show. And I think if you treat it like that, if you give it some respect, you're going to treat the people, whether it's the ushers and the merch people and the people behind the bars, like it's like, if it's this like really fun, fancy night out, I think that's the best way to see theater, is like that becomes a whole experience, and you have dinner before or after, and maybe you stage door and you wait for the actors, and you can, they'll sign your kid's playbill or whatever. Like, I just feel like it's you watch the show and you keep your mouth shut, unless we ask you to sing along, which sometimes we do. We have sing-alongs. Like,
yeah.
just like be respectful and actually like sit there and take it in, and you don't need to check your phone every 2 minutes. You don't need
That's
to,
my biggest thing I have. Like, I hate it. Oh,
like, we can see you looking at your phone screen. It's dark in the house,
yeah,
it doesn't happen all the time, but it's just one of those things where I just feel like if we treated it like it's different than going to the movies or whatever it is that we've gotten so used to doing,
yeah,
that I think it kind of takes care of itself as far as the etiquette goes. I feel like as soon as we get super relaxed with something, that's when all that stuff goes out the window.
yeah. This phone thing just drives me crazy. Like, I feel like I have eagle eyes where even if it's like rows and seats away from me, I feel like I can still see a phone screen. Like,
Totally.
it's the word I hate it so much. And then especially when they're talking, I've had to shush people before. Like, you're talking throughout the entire effing show. You pay
It's crazy.
money to see I think I shushed people last time I saw Moulin Rouge, to be honest. You know? All right, let's talk inside the actor studio questions. Are you ready? Oh,
Yes, go.
okay. What is your favorite word?
My favorite word.
Mhm. For those listening, he is thinking, so I don't want you to think there's
Mm.
just silence. Please take your time in this answer. No pressure,
It's like
no.
a Jeopardy. Can we have like theme music? Like,
Sure. You want to play some Moulin Rouge
I
music?
like intense.
Hmm. Okay. What is your
It
least
means what
favorite?
it
Oh,
it sounds like it means.
yeah, it's an intense word, intense.
Hmm.
What
Hmm.
is your least favorite word?
Moist.
I'm sorry, that always makes me laugh. I don't know why. What turns it's true. If if you look back on some actor studio questions that people have answered, that's one of the top.
I was
You,
gonna say it's got to be in the top. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a weird sound.
I think somebody said like nobody likes to feel it or have it in their mouth. I
Truth.
think that was probably somebody on my podcast who said that. What turns you on?
Um, I think just quality time. I think that's like the biggest thing for me. Just like I love date nights, but as in like sitting across and having conversation and a wonderful meal. That quality time is like my favorite part.
What turns you off? Bad theater etiquette. Just joking.
Hmm. Um, Obliviousness just drives me crazy. Just not like just lack of awareness drives me crazy.
What is your favorite curse word?
Huh, I don't know. You try not to say them in the house, you know?
Oh, do you want to say what it starts with?
I
And
mean, probably the F word more than most things. I don't
okay, great. So the F word, that's fine. You said it.
know.
What sound or noise do you love?
Sound or noise do I love?
Mhm.
I mean, I love to golf and I love being outside and like birds and things like that in the morning, and that outside noises are my favorite.
So nature.
Yeah.
What sound or noise do you hate?
My alarm clock, probably.
Mm.
Or the generic phone one, the
Yeah.
that one.
Oh, my phone alarm is a song from a great comic. You
Yeah.
can change it.
I need to change it, but it makes me get up because I hate it so much, right? I need to change it to something more palatable.
I know for me, I just think it's something nice to wake up to.
Yeah, I get that. I agree.
It used to be a song from Once, and then I changed it. No, we already did that. What profession other than yours would you like to attempt?
I am an actor, so I have this strong sense that I can do anything. So listen, I feel like I could play a lawyer, be a lawyer. Why not? Just
Yeah.
be able to do that, and I think it would be fun to do.
Yeah.
I could play doctor, be doctor. I have doctors in my family. I could be a doctor. Why not?
I was
It's
gonna
the
say
most
maybe,
delusional
yeah.
thoughts that we have. Like the fact that we think we could do these things makes me laugh. But I swear, I have like actual parts of my brain. They're like, oh, you could totally do that.
Yeah. It's funny. I mentioned that to my friends last night at dinner. I was like, yeah, in my head, I think I'm like really great at X, Y, and Z. And then I do it. I'm like, I'm not as good as I thought. But, it's delusion sometimes is not a bad thing.
It's right. It's true.
Yeah.
It's good for what we do.
Yeah. What profession would you not like to do?
I mean, I'm super glad that I'm no longer in the service industry. I think it's everyone should do it, and it is very, very hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I apologize. I live on 8th Avenue and there's sirens. So if you hear them, I apologize.
No, no, can't hear.
Okay.
No.
And then finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Maybe something as simple as I'm proud of you or well done.
Great.
Life well lived.
Yeah, that's nice. And as Mr. Lipton would say, here are your students. Do you teach at all, or is that something that you would ever
I
do?
used to do it in Seattle, and I loved it. It was super fun. I did like they have a kids stage program, which was really great. I never had anything obviously like that growing up. So yeah, I used to do it. I just haven't had time to do a lot of it here. But I definitely think that it's something I might dabble in. Um, at some point.
Are we putting that on your 2024 image board with a
Maybe we should. Yeah. I do a couple classes because it'd be fun. It would be fun to do that.
cool. Okay, so my last question. Why do you
Okay.
think theater is important?
Oh, I think theater is important because I mean, we always talk like the big word in theater, right, is catharsis, right? So we talk about that idea of experiencing, watching someone experience something helps us kind of unload and unpack some of the stuff that we have going on in our own lives. And theater does that better than film. It does that better than television. I think there's something about watching a human being experience something in real time that is so important and so real and visceral. And listen, I know I done pop musicals and all of these things, and there might not be a ton of cathartic moments in those, but I think theater in general and as a discipline, um, I think that you just can't good theater. You just can't fake that stuff,
Yeah.
and so I that's what I love about theater. That's why I think that all kids should try theater, should do something because you're though you have those moments in your life, but you also have these rituals of bonding with other people really quickly around this kind of shared goal and creating these shows. And the other thing that's great about theater is this whole idea that if you can get up in front of someone and say something right and speak, it's gonna help you in your life going forward, whether it's giving a presentation in school to a meeting to whatever, that the skills that you learn doing theater are also like invaluable for life, and for so many different aspects of life. And so I think that like the watching theater, the cathartic aspect of it, and the doing theater, the being a part of this world that I think can only give you skills for life is why I love it. So that'll long answer to a short question.
No, listen, everybody who I've had on the podcast who I remember to ask that question to, because there have been times where have forgotten, everybody's answer is different and, meaningful to them. And however long and
Mhm.
short it is what it is. So there
Yep.
you go.
Good.
So before we end, is there
Awesome.
anything you would like to add? Questions, problems, concerns, life advice, fun facts? Tell the kids at home what else is going on.
Um, yeah, sure. I guess we'll give like a life fact. I do think that obviously we have a lot of people then kids, they love the theater and they take their classes and they go to dance class and they go to acting class and they have voice lessons and they do all these things and they love it. And I'm here to say that you don't have to do all of those things to get good at theater, because I never did, and a lot of people haven't done all of that. I think that that one of the best things you can do for getting good at theater and being a better actor, a better singer, better all these things is just to live life and do lots of things and play a sport and do be good at drawing things and taking classes, and all those things are kind of make for the better artist in general. And I think that like I am so lucky to do what I do for a living, and I fell into it and I didn't train for it since I was the age of 3. It was not That was not a part of my life skills growing up, but I feel like as long as you're like just doing something and learning and living
Yeah.
like the human experience, you're going to get better at theater, and it might fall your kind of go your way eventually. But like I just feel bad for these kids that are just so stuck in this, like, I have to do all of these things, X, Y, and Z. And it's like, it's not X, Y, and Z, it's life. Like, just do lots of stuff and it'll help you, with whatever you're doing. So,
I mean, it's X, Y, and Z, but it can also be like 1, 2, and 3 as well.
1000%.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's,
Completely.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think, I've heard the saying, like, you want to make sure that, there's other added things going on in your life, not just, the X, Y, and Z of it all, as you put it.
for
All right,
sure.
Erin.
For sure.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. You can stay on once I stop recording. Go check out Aaron at Moulin Rouge. Maybe you'll be
Do
lucky
it.
enough to see him as the Duke in that very sexy
That's right.
costume. Um, or as Christian or in the ensemble track. And if you see him in the ensemble, check him out in his fun little bits that he does. And just remind us again when you are not going to be in the show because you're doing symphony stuff, just in case people want to specifically come to see you in the show.
Yes, I will be out of the show February like 20th through March 19th. So
All right, cool. And if,
I'll be away.
they want to see you in a symphony concert, where can they find out that information?
Sure. Yeah, if you the next symphony is coming up. The music of Phil Collins and Genesis in Kansas City, and that's going to be at the end of February. You can go to Kansas City Symphony. If you're up in Calgary, I'll be in Calgary in March, middle of March, doing music of the '80s, which is such a fun show. And then also a show in Raleigh, North Carolina at the end of March. So I'll come and see that one. And then I'll be in Pennsylvania in April at Reading Symphony for '80s. Yeah. So there's one's coming up.
Do the Phil coming in the end, the orchestra do gudung, 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 gudung. Do they do that?
Oh yeah. Oh,
Oh,
it's quite the crowd pleaser.
yeah,
Quite the crowd pleaser.
yeah,
We do the air drum solo together. It's so fun. So,
yeah. My favorite is like the viral videos like on TikTok and Instagram of people like slamming the cabinet doors to that sound. It's always fun.
yep. So
Well,
it's great.
yeah.
Very
On
pleasing.
that note, Phil Collins and, shutting cabinet doors. Thank you everyone for listening and thank you for coming on. Have a good one.
You bet. Absolutely. Thank you.